So, hi Pete, thank you very much for joining us for the Open Doors New Level Leadership series today. So, there's going to be lots of people watching that want to find out about your journey into politics, how you got there, and any advice that you may have for them. So, could you just tell us a little bit about yourself, who you are, what you do, please?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, I am the leader of Milton Keynes City Council. I'm also chair of the LGA Resources Board and on the Labour Exec, and that is the national body representing all councils. So I represent the Labour Party at a national level as well as a local level.
Brilliant. And before we start, could you just outline why you think political leadership is so important in this day and age?
Well, obviously, the world, Milton Keynes, and even people's neighbourhoods are going through a massive change at the moment, and we need really good leaders, really good people in those communities to help residents, to help anybody, really, businesses through that journey, and basically lead and be good members of those communities.
Definitely. And could you just start by explaining as well exactly what inspired you to get into politics and how you got there?
So I'm a what would be really called a cultural politician because my family were involved in politics, my extended family were involved in politics, my granddad was involved in politics. So really for me it was cultural. So the news was always on at home. My mum was always shouting at the telly about politics. But I do recognise there are people that don't come into politics in that way. For a lot of people, it's because actually they see something that happens or they see an event that they want to talk about, or there's something that happens and they want to change it. But for me, it was just cultural. It was just always there. In terms of elected politics, I've always been a member of the Labour Party. Like I say, it was my 14th birthday present. Most people get a bike. I got a membership of the Labour Party. But elected politics is very different. And so in 2011, the local council in my ward stood down, and somebody just said to me, well, you've got a lot of ideas. You always talk about politics. There wasn't very many people around at the time to stand for the Labour Party. So I stood and became a councillor.
And would you say it was quite a gradual progression then from you being involved with the party politics, moving into the more public service aspect of it? How did the progression kind of go? Did you get that sudden wake up in the morning, you think, yep, I do want to go into local politics?
No, it was never my intention to become a local councillor at all. In fact, I never even wanted to work in politics. I was just political. I had worked for an MP in the past, but I thought my time in politics had moved on. But it was an opportunity that came around, and I do believe that sort of mantra, which is if not you, who. And I just really wanted to represent. I lived in New Bradwell. I just really wanted to represent the New Bradwell community, getting something done. It was a play park in the local area, and so I stood. And it was that case of if it wasn't going to be me, it was going to be somebody else, and I didn't think that somebody else would possibly be as good as me. So I stood for the Labour Party, and I won.
Brilliant. And had you thought about becoming the leader of a city council? Clearly it seems that these things were just slightly panning out for you. So when did it shift from yourself being a councillor to thinking, I could do that, I could lead, I could develop this career progression?
So I was quite lucky about where the Labour Party in Milton Keynes was and the Labour Party nationally was in its journey, because all politics is a cycle. Obviously right at this moment the Labour Party is in an upward cycle and the Conservative Party is probably in a downward cycle. But in 2011, the Labour Party only had 8 councillors on Milton Keynes Council. So I became a councillor just at the time when the party was at its lowest ebb on the council. And of those 8 councillors, quite a few of those councillors had been councillors for a long time. They were going to retire. So it was serendipity, really, that just meant, as one of the very few young people on the group, when the time came to become, when Norman Miles, who was leader at the time, decided he didn't want to be leader anymore and retired, the baton, so to speak, was passed generationally to me, because there wasn't very much to choose from, which was not the way you want to become leader. But hopefully I've done a decent enough job since.
You have, and the amount of change that you've seen in that time that you became a councillor,
yeah,
city status.
And so if you were coming on to the Labour group today, we've got 27 councillors. It's a much changed group from when I was a new councillor. And that's the thing about politics. It's one, you've got to take those opportunities as they come, but also there are limited opportunities in terms of leadership or leadership positions, formal leadership positions in the council to go around. There's only one leader, there's only one deputy leader, there's only 3 leaders of groups. You know, we've got a limited number of chairs of committees. And if you look nationally, there's only sort of 650 MPs, of which any time one party will only have just about a majority. I think the Conservatives got 80 majority at the moment. So there would never be more than sort of 350 MPs from any one party in Parliament or Westminster at any one time. So getting into politics is all a matter of timing and making sure that you're putting yourself in the right place, making sure you've got those networks, making sure that you understand, because different political parties have different structures. And so, yeah, it's a journey that is not easy, but it's very worthwhile.
And there may be some people listening today that don't necessarily want to get involved with the party politics, but they may be more passionate about things at a parish level, which of course is just as important. So what do you think the role of parishes kind of comes into things, and how does that work with the council to benefit residents?
So a lot of parishes, but not all, are not party political. A lot of them would say that they're apolitical, but I don't believe you go on any sort of elected body if you're apolitical, because everybody, no doubt, at the event today will want to change something. That's the very nature of why people want to get involved in politics. I don't think anybody gets involved in politics because they want things to stay exactly the same, because why bother? Parishes are the first rung on that ladder. It gives people a community leadership role. There are no independent councillors on Milton Keynes Council. That's because we've got a highly contested set of seats here in Milton Keynes. But it is that first rung on the ladder, and a lot of people who are parish councillors are involved in party politics as well. And so I would say, if people are looking to perhaps become a city councillor, then parish councils are the first step on that ladder to firstly represent those very small micro communities, perhaps even your street, your sort of very small few streets, your ward in a parish, and that can be a stepping stone to the city council.
Definitely. And we've heard a lot about your experience and how you've got here, so it would be quite helpful for those listening to kind of get some advice from you if they do want to progress. So since moving into politics, what sort of challenges have you faced with perhaps the system, with people within it, and how have you dealt with those challenges?
So politics and political parties are quite hierarchical, and they have a lot of formal processes. And rightly so, because as we've seen over the past few years in all political parties, there's been scandals and there's been issues around things like anti-Semitism, or in the Labour Party, or inappropriate behaviour in the Conservative Party. So there are structures in place for the right reasons. So people, if they want to become councillors, they will have to go through proper due diligence. In this day and age of Twitter and Facebook and Instagram, I do feel for young people, because if you're now, you've had a Instagram since you're 14 and you're now maybe in your mid-20s or early 30s, there's a lot of things that you could have put on social media from when you were at university or when you were a teenager that you might not be politically proud of. So the first barrier would be sort of clean up your social media, make sure there is nothing there that is public, that is in your past, that could deter a political party from perhaps wanting to take you forward. And then there's the due diligence around making sure that obviously you'd conform to what that political party believes, because all political parties operate on the Milton Keynes City Council on what's called collective responsibility. You might have your own views, we all have our own views, we discuss those as a group, but in public we take a single position, and that can be quite difficult for people, particularly when they've come onto the council to change things. What I found a barrier when I was certainly on the when I was on the council first are those rules and regulations. You know, you can't just go out and say, I believe this, because firstly it might not do any good, but secondly that's not how groups work and it's not how the council works. So it's about understanding those processes, understanding how how political parties work, and then when you're on the council, it's about understanding the processes of how the council works to get things done, because that's what we all want. We all want to get things done. Nobody just wants to sit there and do nothing. So there are plenty of barriers. There are other barriers that I know other people have faced, particularly young women getting into politics, people from ethnic minorities, and those barriers will be very different to those that I faced. But fundamentally, I think it is about making sure you have the right networks, making sure you're talking to the right people, making sure you're just going out and canvassing or delivering leaflets for those political parties, because they're the things that you will be judged on when perhaps it comes to putting your name forward for selection.
Definitely. And thinking back to your experience and all that you've achieved over the past decade or so, what would you say some of the highlights of your political career have been so far?
So, I mean, I think the biggest highlight for most of us over the past few years has been Milton Keynes Award of City Status. I think in terms of being the leader of a council, it doesn't come much bigger than that. I mean, you and I both went to London to actually collect the letters patent that made us a city, which was fantastic. But just on a lower level, just as a ward councillor, it's things like making sure that the play park has been improved. It's making sure that the new Bradwell Park was given green flag status. You know, it's those little things that sustain you as a local councillor just as much as being leader of the council. It's the big wins, and so we've done lots of things. I'm very proud of what the council has done on the cost of living crisis. I'm very proud of what the council did during COVID, particularly coming out of COVID to support the economy, and particularly women, and getting more women into work, more tech entrepreneurs, more female tech entrepreneurs. I think that's been a great thing. As a ward councillor, it's the things I've done for my local place that have also given me a lot of joy.
Brilliant. And no doubt there have been hard times too. So what would you say you've learned from any political mistakes that have been made?
Obviously, as leader of the council, I never make mistakes. But if you do, I think the best thing you can do as a politician is own up to them, put your hands up straight away, be genuine if you're sorry about something. I think we all see those non-apologies from politicians on the telly, which is, I'm really sorry if you took offence, or I'm really sorry that I was found out about doing this thing, as opposed to I'm sorry for doing this thing in the first place. So what I would say to any aspiring politician, or when I give mentoring nationally to new leaders or new politicians, my advice is always, there is no situation that you get yourself into that you shouldn't stop, reflect, have a look at it, question if you're doing the right thing, and if you're not doing the right thing, because ultimately we're all here to deliver for people. We're all here, we are politicians. At the end of the day, we are all judged on getting re-elected. If you're doing something that is fundamentally not just unpopular, because I think you can do things that are right and unpopular, but if you do something with the best of intentions and then it later transpires that maybe that thing isn't working, stop, stand back, reflect, and if it's not the right thing, hold your hands up and find another way to do something. You know, there are very few things, my politics is there are very few things in life that you would sort of march towards the cannons for. It's about outcomes, and if those outcomes aren't happening, then yeah, put your hands up, say sorry, move on, do something different. And that's the thing that I've learned in my time, to become maybe a little bit less politically belligerent and more pragmatic in the way I go about things.
And that answers my next question really, which was how do you deal with opposition and scrutiny from other political figures that you may face?
I think if that scrutiny is fair and genuine, I think you have to take it on the chin. I think you take all political sort of rough and tumble. You just have to. That is the nature of politics. I mean, the word politics just comes from sort of Latin. The Latin sort of is to be able. It's to be able to do something. The power to be able. There's a Spanish word which is poder, which is power, and that's all politics is. It's the power to be able to do something, and all party politics is a difference of opinion of how we get to the same place. Now, that's easy to say. Some of those opinions are fundamental, whether you tax people or not, whether you intervene in an economy or not, whether you support people through the cost of living crisis or not. There is no right or wrong in terms of the general population. There is there are values and principles that mean you do something as a political party. Well, that doesn't mean the opposition's values and principles are wrong. And so what I've learned, Milton Keynes is a highly political place on Milton Keynes City Council. More or less every seat on the City Council is contested in a way that not many places are. But I wouldn't have hung around for 10 years as leader if you don't become pragmatic, if you don't listen to the opposition and ultimately do the right thing by the citizens, because nobody thanks you for doing what you think is right. I've always taken it as the basis that as a leader, I'm there to represent my community, my group, my own values, the values of people that vote for me, the values of people that don't vote for me. So there's a whole patchwork and network of interests that you're representing, not any one single interest. And I think you always take that with how you deal with the opposition as well. And you know, and the Labour group will know that the number one rule in the Milton Keynes Council Labour group is that you treat each other with respect. We have our debates, we have our discussions, but we always treat each other with respect, and we treat our opposition members with respect, and we treat council officers with respect as well. And I don't think you can go far wrong from that basic principle.
And that's given a lot of people today, no doubt, food for thought. And if we could sum it up, what would you say are 3 key strengths that you think are necessary for people to exceed in politics? To exceed in politics, I think you have to be pragmatic. You can't take things personally. I think you have to be somewhat ambitious, but not overly ambitious, because I always say nobody in this council, there are 57 councillors in Milton Keynes Council, nobody puts a name on a ballot paper and says to 10,000 people, or if you're an MP, 70,000 people, judge me, without some level of ego. We're all ambitious, we all want to get things done. So there is a level of ambition there, but not too ambitious, because in politics, if you come over as over ambitious, I think people will say, why are you in this? You've got to be, and finally, I think the final thing is you've got to be in it for the right reasons. You should not be in politics for the title. You shouldn't be in politics for the kudos it might give you in your community. You shouldn't be in politics because of maybe just one issue, particularly party politics. So it's reflect on why you want to be a councillor. There may be other ways, as you've said, parish councils, but there are numerous community groups out there. There are residents' associations. There are numerous ways to represent your community. Party politics and being elected to a position on the city council is just one of those ways. So my primary bit of advice would be reflect why you want to become a city councillor, why you want to represent the party you want to represent, and if that's still what you want, you've just got to develop a thick skin and be pragmatic. And so it comes back round to the first one. Brilliant. Thank you very much.
No problem.